This is the Unbreakable Golfers podcast, where we're shining a light on your pain and weakness and how it is affecting your positions, your power, and your performance on the golf course. Okay, lucky enough today, I've got Peter Hudson, head of the World Golf Teaching Federation, Great Britain and Ireland. He's also the founder of YGA, and he's got a program which is a free lessons for life, which is, we'll cover some of that as we go into. But first of all, Peter, thank you for giving the time available this morning with everything you've got going on. First thing I want to get into is just tell anyone that's listening, I mean, how did you get into this coaching role of golf? Where did it all start for you?
I think through being a very, very poor golfer and having a lot of golf lessons and seeking out how to get better and really discovering that there wasn't a lot of great information out there, and it certainly wasn't helping me. And I wondered why it wasn't helping. So that took me to play a lot of golf, like a lot of people. And then I had a career mostly in managing petrol service stations, and that career was coming to an end, and I wondered what I could do. And the only thing that I wanted to do was help coach golf. And I was lucky enough to have a moment in time where I met somebody that had a specific project and product going that I got involved with, and it went on from there.
Brilliant. I mean, it's quite similar. You talk about the struggle with golf. This is something I imagine most people won't talk about. You know, that's the one thing that I've learned with what I did. I struggled at golf. I struggled with my body. I fixed that. So then it was very difficult for me to talk about struggling at golf when you're trying to help golfers. So like that struggle, one thing that I found very frustrating is that there's so many conflicting ideas when you search online. There's so much you sort of, you can go down a rabbit hole, and then someone tells you something to go down a rabbit hole. But a lot of the time as well, when people come and see a coach, they don't actually follow the instructions that the coach says.
So we could be here a day.
Yeah.
So again, so for me, let's put this thing in the coach training perspective. So if I was talking to a coach now who I was training, and the coach said to me, the client doesn't tend to do what I've asked them to do, for me, then that wasn't set out correctly in the first place. So there wasn't enough conversation. We didn't seek to understand that person enough. So at the heart of my philosophy, which I've got from experience and from other great people within the industry, that we are coaching the person and not the golf swing. So only by understanding the person and how they work and helping them to discover what's actually best for them, helping people understand themselves, then that releases all of the power that every human being has to do anything they want. So this is a really huge cultural difference between most coach education, which is technical. It's saying that the reason you can't do this is because you don't do this. Whereas what we really need to look at is, well, why do you want to do it in the first place? What would motivate you to be curious about how to do it differently? What information would you need to then transpose that into something that becomes real? And if you got that, what would it get you? So, again, we're talking about the idea that anybody can go for a lesson and get anything from it within half an hour is ridiculous. I generally have to speak to people for 4 hours before I find out what it is that would be good for that client compared to what it is that they want. And the second part of that then for me is when any golfer says to me, I'm struggling. Well, for me, this is this is more about life, in that most people are struggling through life, and while we associate it with a struggle, then I don't think that we're in the right place to do it in the first place. So for me, then, you know, everything has to become within our language a challenge. That challenge has to have a purpose, and we need to discover the enjoyment of being engaged in that process if we are going to get a return on our investment. And you don't necessarily, this is the fantastic thing, you don't necessarily have to get a result out of the engagement, because the engagement in itself is something that brings pleasure. Whether it brings some goal forward that you thought was unattainable is immaterial, because it's an engagement of that process.
Yeah.
So that was quite a long answer.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a loaded question, because it was one of those that I know you could go in any direction with it. I mean, I know one thing with me, so if someone comes to see me for an assessment or a treatment, I know that pain in their knee might be caused from their knee. More often than not, it's going to come from the ankle or the hip. However, it could also come from the shoulder, it can come from the opposite toe, and it can be emotional pain. And it's that information, it's by you looking at them, moving them a certain way, getting into their mind, their history and all things. It's not cut. There might be a system that you kind of follow, but really everything, like you say, you use the blank slate, which I want you to talk about, because that is one of those things where I've had people before ask me, what's the best corrective exercise for T-spine or something like that, or you know, increasing upper back movement. I go, okay, how much does your upper back move, and why are you trying to move your upper back, and what is causing, you know, let's find out first, because you probably need more, but we need to look from top to bottom. I need to look from the top of head to the toe. So talk to me about this blank slate idea.
Yeah, I've called it blank canvas, but that's exactly the same thing. It's an egoless way of, so first of all, it's egoless. So in other words, when we are thinking about what we know, then that can only get in the way of discovery. So there was a beautiful TED talk, and it was talking about the difference between how a general looks at the battlefield compared to how the scout. So the scout has no emotional involvement in the outcome. He's just looking at, you know, where the sun is, you know, what the landscape is, where people are, and they haven't got a plan. They're not trying to look at it as a plan. They're just looking at the information. Whereas the general back at camp is worried about people dying and so on and so forth. He's got a lot more going on the emotional front. The scout's just looking at it. And for me, that's what we are. We are just a scout, because the answers aren't within you and me. They probably are, but what we're looking for is what's good for the client, and the only person that can tell us what's good for the client is the client. We can't be them. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to be them, for sure. And it was interesting what you said, because as you know, we've got this project on with this guy that's trying to get on Champions Tour within a year, and we're doing some very accelerated learning challenges, and he had a challenge with his knee. And you know, the first thing I said was that you need to get it looked at, find out what is actually going on there. And then he came back and he said, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build some muscles around there to strengthen it so it will last long. And of course, the challenge is then that we are going to change. So we've got to do an accelerated program within a year, and he's about to put on muscles that are going to change the golf swing. You know, so you've got to think that out, both from a logical, analytical, find out what's good for him, for his knee. So you have to ask the questions, you know, what are your long-term prognosis if you don't build up these muscles? What's that compared to the major goal, which is in the year? And it goes on forever.
Yeah.
You know, so, but eventually you have to come back to that place, and we go, well, no, if the task is to get you on European Champions Tour, then for this year to get you on there, you know, if it's painful, have an injection, because because otherwise we're gonna disturb the plan. So you know, to think that if you think that you know the answers, you've got a problem. But what you do need to know is to know what the next question is, and that sometimes isn't the easiest thing in the world. But you're more likely to get to it from a blank canvas where you've almost got no idea what you're doing, because when you have no idea what you're doing, you're more likely to ask the right question.
And I mean, we've spoke about this before, and I said about how when I was going through the World Golf Teaching Federation manual, and there was a lot in it because I've done it. You come at this from the golf swing from a really different perspective. So there's a lot in there about golf, but there's a lot in there about other things. And I would read stuff and think, oh, I know this already. You know, I've done courses on this, and I would sort of not dismiss it, but I would work my way down to the next bit, trying to find the stuff that I didn't think I already knew, whatever it may be. Then when I went through it again as a second time, I'm looking at the stuff and I'm going, and it's given me the ability to think completely differently, because now I'm going into the manual to study it and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, right, what am I reading here that I need to think completely different about? Like you say, blank canvas, look at it, think about it. And there was insights I was getting of things I learned 4, 5, maybe even 6 years ago that I didn't understand. I learned it, but I didn't understand it. And now all of a sudden I'm understanding something that from 6 years ago and piecing things together just because I just went in there with a beginner's mind.
Yeah, I mean, so several things spring to mind with that answer. So they in neuro-linguistic programming, which is, you know, where I started some of this mind work, where it was born from, you know, the NLP it starts with practitioner. And for me, that's the point, the practitioner. You have to practice it for 40 years before you actually understand what it does. And there's nothing wrong with that. So there's nothing wrong with people starting out and say, look, we've got an equation here and this equation balances. So let's put stuff into the equation. But whenever you do that and you do it again and again and again and again, you start to get a lot of different answers. And so the basic equation stands there, but then you discover things from it. So we've done within the World Golf Teaching Federation, and when we've done the back hit session, and I've probably done as many back hit sessions as anybody in the world. It's just incredible. Every time there's a different solution, and the reason that every time there's a different outcome or a different solution is that every time I've done it, it's a different person. and that person, because it's the inner game of golf, it's what's inside them, the outcomes are always going to be, you know, different. And so, yeah, you got the equation, but the equation isn't it, because the answer's within that problem. You know, again, the one thing that I very quickly learned, I was really lucky in that I went to those seminars that you've gone, and you know, and I heard this before, and then that voice in my head said, I know this, and it shut down. And I was really lucky in that very quickly I learned that was my ego, and I just had to shut that off and stay listening. So I think this is a really good point. The biggest single reason why I learned this quickly was because I very quickly understood the importance of listening, and actually got several books on listening and read about how to listen. And for me, that was the fundamental reason why I very quickly managed to get away from that habit and started listening more. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't use the ability to turn off sometimes, because I will. But I think that just I know much better now when to listen, and when it's okay not to, and when it's probably not in my interest to either. And you know, that's a skill that takes some while to get.
I think that's right, because when it comes to coaching, in theory, we just ask better questions than they ask of themselves. So we will ask better questions,
Absolutely,
and they have the ability to think. And
questions they can't ask themselves,
yes,
because they haven't got that perspective.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I'm very big on frames and frame control. I know you work with something sort of similar, and this idea, like if you sort of see something through a different perspective, you see it completely different. It's no different to looking at a house from the front, and all of a sudden you go around and look at a house from the side. It's the same, that's a completely different perspective. And one of the things with frames that I found, like, so I didn't explain to you this before, but obviously when someone comes to see me, they either have pain in their body, it stops them getting a certain position in a golf swing, stops them generating a certain amount of power, which affects their performance. So if we fix that pain, we can increase the position, we can give them more power, more performance.
Yep.
So when I explain that to them, I say, look, this is the framework we're working around. You're not coming here because you got an injured back and you can't play golf. You're coming here because you've got an injured back and it's affecting your performance. And getting them to buy into that idea of buying into it's affecting your performance, because what will happen is they will get fixed in a treatment and they won't do the exercises because they're no longer in pain. And I link that pain. I say, look, listen, your pain is linked to your performance. Just because you're not in pain now, we still need to get you in the right positions. We still need to generate more power. We need to generate more performance. And one of the things that you said about knowing when to listen, that's the hard thing about coaching, because we learn more and more and more and more and more, and we just want to ask the right questions all the time. And sometimes you don't listen to the most important bit of information. And sometimes, I know you're big on tonality. They might say something in a different tone, and what you hear is not what they've said, but the tone they've said it, and then you can actually step back and ask the next right question.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what I think that, as far as, again, from my perspective as a trainer of over 1,500 coaches, what I see is, and this is obviously understandable, is people trying to be enough as a golf coach and wanting to be seen as someone with the skills. And that is hard work. When you really understand what listening and perspectives is, my God, it's so much more fun to coach. It really becomes, every minute and every question and every answer becomes fun. And, isn't that wonderful that you actually have more fun not trying to know stuff? And you get better results not trying to know anything. Yes, you do need to be a great listener. You need to practice listening. You need to be aware of those cues to other questions, and when to just shut up. Which, again, as we know, is still one of the most powerful tools. Just go, and that drags out some more, and then you do that again, and that drags out some more, and then you do that, and finally, in front of you, somebody says something that you see has struck, has turned on a light inside their head, and you don't even have to know what it is that's happened, but there's been a fundamental change that will give them some energy, power, or resources in a proper direction. And it's brilliant that it's an easier way to coach. Some people might even call it a cop-out. You don't have to tell people what to do and then be reliant on the fact that they do it, and then reliant on the fact that that works. And again, going back to being a coach, as far as, if we look at the marketing system, then basically the facts are very simple. If you do something wrong in the service industry, usually that person will tell 20 people. If you do something right, you'll be lucky if they tell anybody. Okay, so if you look at it purely from a marketing perspective, if you keep on putting your head on the block, it's going to get chopped off. And so it doesn't really make sense to operate like that. It makes much more sense to operate in a way that, first of all, the client's on board. Because, again, you go back to what you said, when we all do this, we think we know this. So you may have had a lesson, and worse, you might have had a lesson off David Ledbetter. And worse, you've paid £1,000 for it. So you've hit some of the marketing headlines there. You're investing in the top. You're investing in the very, very best. And this guy tells you this, and technically he's right. But if you'd have done all the other questions, that wouldn't have been the answer. So then, when it comes to you wanting to change what he said, because they've invested that money, their time, their belief in that, they're going to turn around when you say what you say, and they're going to go, no, you're wrong. This guy said that. So this is how damaging it can be. And what I think is important is that it's not that coaches have to stand up there and be respected because somebody thinks they know something. They need to be respected because the person who they was working with has only said really good things about them, about how they helped them achieve something that they hadn't been able to achieve before. And that, for me, is marketing in whatever industry you are. So again, we're back to big picture, that everything is linked together. You can't take marketing out of it, because again, there's so many great philosophies and cultures within marketing. You know, and how can we embed them in all of the knowledge of the golf swing, the knowledge of psychology, how people learn, and make that into something that is ultimately successful, even if the worst is only engagement of the person. They, you know, they spend some time in the now, they spend some time in the present, which for me is kind of like as good as life gets. I don't think that there's anything bar being in the present.
Yeah, yeah. It's a perfect segue, because obviously what we've done is I've already written a page of notes of questions I want to ask you that have just come up as we're talking. So I want to get back to what you're saying, being present. And anyone that doesn't understand, I want to talk about back hit, just a little sort of talking that, because the reason was when I very first saw your video on it, and I sort of looked at it and I thought, yeah, it perfectly makes sense being in the present moment and all that lot. Then I tried it and I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. Then what happened is recently I played and my swing was struggling just a bit on the course. So I went to back hit and started hitting the ball a hell of a lot better. And I had it stairs, and then I was able to get completely out of my own way, carry on playing. And then guess what? My putting was better, my chipping was better. And I was in this, and it was very, very hot that day. I think it was 36. It was hot. It was right in it. First 18 holes I'd had for a very long time. Everything in my mind was telling me that, you know, I'm tired, I'm worn out, I haven't played for ages, it's really, really hot. And I put myself in this back hit, which I've obviously I only heard about the inner game of golf from you. And it has something that it just makes so sense, and people will hear you explain it and think it's too easy, it can't work. So try and give anyone that doesn't understand what back hit is, how they can just try and get an idea of how taking this very, very simple concept and how it can just get them completely out of their own way by being present.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, we have to move towards the philosophies of Tim Galway, who wrote the book. And one of the biggest philosophies is that you as a human being are enough. And it's a very simple suggestion that whatever our neural pathways are for a golf swing, and let's just suggest for a second that you have what would be an authentic swing. So if you weren't trying to do anything, if you weren't trying to change something, if you weren't trying to improve something, that it's the best that you can do at this present moment in time without change. It would make sense, therefore, to not try and just let that swing work the best that it can. And what Tim was suggesting is that when we try, is that we alter the fundamental thing that we already can do, however well we can do it, or however poorly we can do it. But we've all had those rounds where we've got into the zone. Everybody's had a round where they get into that place where things just flowed. And it's about always seeking that out and accepting as much that whenever we go to the golf course at any one time, that's the best that we can be, and then allowing ourselves to be the best that we can be. And all back hit is a distraction to try. It's not even pure. It's not pure. There's better than that, but it is an opening to the concept that we will perform, we will peak perform to that person that we currently are with our current knowledge set more by getting out of the way by trying. And of course, the other thing within back hit is because there is less trying, there's less energy expounded. Because of that, we can now start to learn life skills. So we hit a shot and it's good, we accept it. Hit a shot and it doesn't go where we want it to go, we accept it. And then it doesn't have an emotional tag on it. It's like, you know, we get to that hole with the lake on the right, and every time we put it in the right, so you aim further left, and still the ball manages to get the lake on the right. And, you know, it's just that, yeah, just allow it to happen. So, yeah, I recommend the 2015 edition of the Inner Game of Golf by Tim Galway. For anybody that wants to know more about that, go to the guy that really started it all. and learn from him, because he's an incredible guy, and he's influenced a lot of coaching in a lot of different genres as well. Which kind of like, again, so that's really interesting as well. That the actual skill, the technique, goes into everything. So he's written books on the inner game of music, the inner game of skiing, the inner game of tennis, the inner game of business, and the inner game of everything. So it's all about being enough in every single circumstance.
I mean, I must admit, it's like we were saying before about how, well, I know this already. I mean, and you think that, and it just stops you learning. It's literally, you might as well put pull the curtains, and it just stops you learning when you say, I know this already, and you're looking for the next thing. Because like what we're saying about frames, sometimes the thing that you know already is the pre-frame to the next part of learning you're going to get into. So then if you go into that and you listen to that first thing and you think you know it already, then when you walk into the next part of the learning or whatever it is you're trying to work yourself through, you will get to a point that you're not getting the most out of it. And that is the one thing that I found, would say, with, say, for instance, back hit or eagle estate or anything like that, you just completely get out of your own way, and you actually can absorb the information in the area you are and the energy that you got at the moment. I mean, there's that saying in it, where your attention goes, your energy flows. And then, like say, with back hit, you're sort of focus, if you're trying to focus on your heel to sort of, make sure you turn right, or you're focusing on keeping your head down, or all these things, and you just do this very simple move, and you get more present and more of a feel. And that was one thing I used to, let me say, about all the information that I used to read and all that struggling at golf. You always sort of see that the sort of better players would talk about feel. Oh, well, I feel this, I feel that. And I would always think to myself, but I don't feel anything. But it's because I'm spending all my time thinking about grip pressure and straight left arm and pressure on my right foot and make sure I do a big turn and follow through. And I'll see that idea of getting present and just being in a situation you can just calm down and let your authentic swing go out.
Let's just I want to come in and take this a little bit further now. So you said something right at the start about why people don't do what it is that they've been asked to do, and then you suggested that and I'm going to take a big sweeping statement, 99% of all golfers do exactly what we do. But why do we do it, and why are those players in field? Well, so basically most sportsmen are more kinesthetic, so they do more in that feeling place anyway. Because we can't feel, which isn't true, but because we don't operate in feel, we look to the technical for those improvements that they're making through feel. So this means, again, wearing my coaching hat, a coach training hat, is that before we try and do anything, we must know what it feels like to do what we do. And no golf coach starts off there. And that's where we have to start off. The first thing I need to do is to get you to feel what you're actually doing, okay? Through a sensory process, through a super slow process, through a 50%. And the more that we can start to feel what it is that we're doing, then there is a natural propensity for you to cure it at an unconscious level, which is quite incredible. So what we're saying is, as soon as actually someone become aware that they're cast it and thrown over the top, if they were aware of that movement, their unconscious knows enough that, if they were throwing a spear, they wouldn't throw it like this, they'd throw it like that. And so it starts to fit in. So for me, that's the huge thing that's wrong with coaching, is that we try and tell people what they're doing wrong. So again, I've had these interviews where people come to me and say, I want to be a golf coach, I can see everything that everybody does wrong. Well, I'm sorry, but there's so much on TV, of course we can see what's going wrong. That's not the challenge. And then the next thing, the very first thing you said, why don't people do what they've been told to do? And it's simply because it hasn't been explained. There hasn't been a cause and effect. They haven't understood the importance. They haven't understood the number of repetitions they're going to need to make change. And the books all tell us, if you read any books, that most people say that 99% of golf swings don't change after 2 to 3 years. They stay exactly the same. And that's because this project isn't managed. We have to manage the project. And that's the only reason why people's movements, joints don't get better. is because they don't stay on task. And the importance of staying on task hasn't got to them in the way that it needs to get to them. Or they, and this is really simple, get to the place where they themselves make the decision that they're not prepared to do the work to make the change.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not, well, that's fine. You know, look, you're going to die anyway. You know, what does it matter if you die half a year earlier in a little bit of pain, you know, and instead of having a round of golf? Because, you know, I'm never going to stop doing stuff because something hurts, because I realise the importance of being engaged. Plus the fact, as we know, that as soon as you're engaged, quite often you don't feel the pain anyway, because you're just in the thing. Yes, lots of things in that. And this is, and again, it goes back to the point that you can't possibly hope to understand all of this information from a manual. You only understand it, and this is the reason why, more than any reason I understand this, is because I've trained between 12 to 1,500 coaches, and I've been there and seen millions of failures doing stuff. And it's not until you kind of like get involved in all of this and you see it happen again and again and again and again and again, do you begin to get answers. And that's why, you know, some of the coaches that started off but have been doing it for 20, 30 years but really care about their clients get to become really good coaches without reading one single word of what anybody has to say about anything, because they're putting it through the experience mill, but they've got an attitude of, well, I want to help. And they've got an attitude of listening. So they're looking and they're going and they're asking themselves questions. And sure, they get to it a lot quicker if they ask other people about what they're looking at and get some interpretation of it. But nevertheless, because their attitude is loving and caring, they still become fantastic golf coaches.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, that was one of the things that when I sort of would travel to go and work with other treatment people and see what they're doing with their clients and things like that. When I had this shift that I would say, rather than saying, right, how do you do this treatment or why do you do this treatment? I would say to them, right, what is your thinking process when someone comes in with this? Because I want to know how they think first before I can know what they do, because there might be a completely different reason why they do it. And a lot of that stuff, let's say with coaching, with treatment, with assessment, whichever way it be, it's that intuition. You just, something feels, looks, something you sense, something is going in a certain way and you couldn't verbalize it. It's not something you could say, well, that you just go, I need to test this, I need to look at this, and then it lends you down another path, because you are literally being in the moment, being present, seeing what they're doing, seeing their range of motion, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's a drill that I don't know whether have we got enough time or not. How are we doing?
Yeah, no, I've got plenty.
There was a drill that I used to do a long way back, and it was simply getting the coaches in training to tell me everything they see. And when you work like that, you only see what you know. You don't see what you don't know. Now, if you only see what you know, then you can only see that you know, and you can't see all the other stuff. So we did this drill where I'd say, right, I want you to spot something you've never seen before. And we used a scanning system where we went up and down the body. And it was quite incredible what people discovered by looking at places, because they'd never looked at that place before. So they'd never looked at what the little toe was doing or the big toe was doing, or how the feet were moving or how the hands were moving. And they saw so much. Now, once you get really aware of everything, then the diagnosis is simpler when you don't know anything, because your unconscious tells you, it's taking in everything, and then your unconscious tells you where it is. And you don't actually have to go through anything that is logical, analytical. It just comes to you. And then everything's really intuitive. And it's, you know, when you look at how golfers used to putt, when you used to watch the TV 40 years ago, and they used to hold monster putts, well, yeah, they had some experience of that green, but most of that was just complete intuition about where to put it, and having that gut sense that, yeah, that's the place I need to put it. This is what it needs to feel like, and it works. So, yeah, again, another whole side of our human existence that really we don't know very little about. But when you tap into the resource that is both you and both the client at an unconscious level, you move mountains. There's no two ways about it. The extraordinary happens.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said earlier about when you ask a question or you show them something that they're unaware of about themselves and they have that light bulb moment and you can see all of a sudden their eyes open up, they're thinking and they're just going down different paths they'd never even considered before. It's quite impressive stuff because you actually do feel, oh yeah, I've actually made a difference by asking one simple question that they've never looked at it that time or that way. Yeah, one other thing I want to cover before we sort of get towards the end of our time, because in theory we've only covered the first question, so with the list of questions have gone through. That's it. That's it. Like I say, we both like to flow the way we go through it. Now, this idea of building coaches. Now, you've put together a system that, so look at it, going through it, looking at the information. To me, it's for golf coaches to become golf coaches, but also as well, it's this elaborate personal development system that someone could come through your program and learn so much about themselves outside of everything they do with learning about a golf swing and learning about coaching and things like that. You've obviously put a lot of time and effort into the work that you do and how you do it based around actually making people become better in themselves in everyday life. What was it that was the driving factor that made you sort of get in this idea of coaching coaches and actually building a tribe of coaches that think differently?
Well, again, it came through my lack of success in trying to play golf. And it was, so then I just started to look to how to play better golf and what was missing, and then came across all these things. And then somewhere along the line, realized that, and again, if you listen to the Free Lessons for Life program, I don't actually put golf in there because there's an expectancy of me as a golf coach that it's going to be about golf, and it is about golf. But basically, when you use all of this information to play better golf, extraordinary things happen to you as a person because you have to look life in a different, you have to be in the present. You have to let your ego go. You have to control your emotions. And when I mean control your emotions, I mean use the correct emotions for each aspect of your performance. And then when it was only later on that I discovered that this let's call it self-improvement or self-enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, was so important because we have to walk the talk. So yeah, this huge misconception that you have to play great golf to be a great golf coach is just inane, because all of the attributes of a great golf coach are totally different from that of a great player. But coaches coming into it worry that because they can't play golf as good as a pro, then they're going to be looked at in a poor way. Well, that is the challenge of the learner. It's not the challenge of the golf coach. So the learner's mindset, they're obviously not understanding themselves, because they're thinking that because somebody else can swing a golf club, that they can learn from them. There are ways that you can learn from them, but it's not in the way that they think. So they've actually got a misconception about the learning. You have no need to play great golf. But of course, what came out of this is that, one, the power of the person. And if you're going to walk the talk, then you have to be that mentor for this new behavior that will help them in life. So every single person that I deal with gets involved heavily in this process, and they're mostly as golf coaches, so there'll be more as golf coaches than they will be in players. They enjoy better lives. There's absolutely no, I have got testimonials coming through the roof. Just I would say that 98% of all of the testimonials that are positive, so we're not saying that everything's positive, but 98% of those that are positive say these words: it was a life-changing experience. You know, not that I became a golf coach through it, or I did this, or I did that. It was a life-changing experience. And I'm certainly not here selling it that way. That's what happens. You know, it's a consequence of taking on this information and tapping in, obviously, to what's already inside you. Because You know, who wants to go around being negative, depressed about stuff, when you can move to this place where it's so much easier to cope with the challenges that will be sent to us, because that's the way of life. And some of those are within our control, but there's a lot that's out of our control. So the only thing within that is we can control our reaction to those things that we can't control. And that's, and if we then take that to the golf, the wind has a gust and it blows up and it blows your ball into the rough. There's nothing you can do about that. All you can do is deal with yourself and what you're going to do next. And it kind of like, it's as simple as it flows like that.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's perfect, because it made me think. Back in 2016, I joined a marketing program with a guy called Paul Malt, and he was building a self-development program as well on the side, and he was testing it out with us. And a lot of his coaching was based around mindset and challenging those sort of stories, self-limiting beliefs, all things like that. And it completely changed my frame of mind by going through. But I signed up to learn about marketing from him. Like, he was a marketing guy in the fitness industry, and he completely changed my perspective about where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and led me to a load of other coaches and load of other programs. But I signed up for marketing, and that's what the thing, because when I've been through your content, a lot of it is I've seen it from a different frame and learnt it. And when I was going through it, all I kept thinking is, if someone's never seen this stuff, if someone's never seen how it's your self-limiting beliefs and how you see yourself, and a lot of the issues that you see in other people, or projections on yourself, and just be able to be calm and egoless state, and even the core state one. I mean, we didn't have time to talk about it today, but core state and things like that. There is so much in this program that gives people the ability to, if they've never seen anything like this before, it will literally completely change your frame of view on a lot of stuff that you're doing. Now, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on to have this interview, because I haven't seen you market it that way, but I can see the effort and content and the amount of information that's in there, which is kind of, you probably won't see anywhere else in anything similar.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that come up there. The number of selling, courses you can go on, and of course, the art of selling is not to sell, which you say it's quite short. So the art of selling is to get somebody to actually want something that they've got to realise that they want it. But the other thing was education there, in that when I was at school, I was a pretty poor student and certainly not an academic. Probably reasonably bright, but certainly had no memory or anything like that. And so, the information never went in and never stayed there. And I didn't read a book until, from school, I didn't read a book, fiction or non-fiction, till about 40. And now I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of books, and spent millions on seminars and so on and so forth. And there's a direct correlation between golf, the fact that at the beginning I wasn't very good at it, and I needed to acquire. But then what that acquired me, and then what that gave me, then said, well, I don't have to be good to enjoy this. And then that took me to enjoy it. So some of this is just getting older, in that you kind of like learn to accept that you're not going to win the British Open, not because you couldn't, but because things haven't happened in a certain order that allowed that to happen, but they've led you to something else. And for me, it's the fact that what makes this so much fun for me is that when people decide to become golf coaches, it's purely out of passion and love. And that makes for an incredible experience for me, for those people involved, and those people with the right attitude. And it's just wonderful, when all of these people trying to help other people all come together as a mass, and then realize, that we've got to drop the ego and get into these other places and start to question and listening. And without a doubt, it just changes, and hopefully that will continue organically with the success of this training program, and hopefully it will spread into other genres. So, you know, I go for, I'm now a huge fan of coaching. So whenever it is that I do anything, you know, so skiing, I've just started skiing 2 years ago, and, you know, I've probably had 50 to 100 lessons already. And I can take their information so much better. But I'm fully embraced. The number of ski coaches I've helped, the number of tennis coaches, football coaches, because it's all the same. Nothing, everything, and it could even be a relationship coach. It could be a business coach. But you can't help but help people with this information, which I think is just fantastic.
Yes, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. It's very similar to me. I struggled at school. You know, I didn't read books. I didn't do anything. And then I found a passion, and my back got injured. I was going to see people to get my back fixed so I could play golf.
Yeah.
And what they would do is they would literally say, "Oh, you need to rest for 6 weeks." And like, I'm playing in competitions. I don't want to rest. It used to drive me crazy. And it was like, "Oh, you have to come and see me 3 times a week for the next 2 weeks." So I started studying it, and it was that passion. It was a foreign language, learning about the body.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, my mind opened up because I had the passion for it. And when you have the passion, you just absorb so much information. And like you say, you get to the point where you just want to share it. You just literally want to tell people. And sometimes you have to hold back because there's so much information in there. You literally just have to go little bits at a time. But you say, when you find that passion for something, and that is, you can see it in your writing, you can see it in your course. There's a lot.
And again, as far as you're concerned, there's a huge delight here because, you know, what we have is we have the game of golf played on the golf course. We have the anatomy and how it produces the golf swing, and then we have the geometry of science that tells us how we're going to have to hit the ball. Now, without a doubt, there's only 1 in 1,000 people that have that part that you have. So if you then mix it with these 2 other parts, then yeah, your future is guaranteed without a doubt, because there's a lot of us trying to get that anatomy part, but you know, as you will tell us, it is complicated. So, you know, so as far as I'm concerned, I did some pull check work, I did some other stuff, I did some study, but for me, I haven't got the time to go into that. So I just said, right, I just need to have somebody in my team that can do what you do, but that also talks my language, because the last thing I want is someone doing something, if we're doing this for the golf swing, but then they're doing something that's for the body but not for the golf swing. And you need to have that relationship with these people within the collaboration that also understand, well, what's the purpose here, what is the purpose, but to make sure that's ecologically correct with them as a person as well, and you know what they want to be doing when they're 90. And yeah, so you're in a great position, and it's wonderful. And again, you can't help but think that this is how it was meant to be. But you know, you love golf, you love that, and then you get to where you got now, and you go, yeah, the angels are working with me here, aren't they? The gods are supporting this.
When you said then about collaboration, I think this is really, really, really important. Anyone listening to this, they need to kind of understand. So if they go and see someone who's treatment or see someone who's a golf coach, they need to be able to speak to the golf coach and let them know what they're doing. Because one of the things that I've noticed in the past is a lot of lower back injuries, I've mentioned it before, are because they haven't got enough rotation in their upper back. So I would speak to people and say, look, when people sign up to me, are you currently having lessons with someone constantly? And if they say yes, say, right, give me their details so I can send them what we've got. Because what we might do is we will increase the range of motion in your upper back because we want to stop this pain in your lower back. But you need to let your golf coach know, because we can't have the golf coach going, no, we don't want to mess with your upper back. We just that simple collaboration that I'll be able to speak to the pro and say, this is why we're doing it. And they've got the information they need to be able to get the benefit moving forward. And this collaboration thing, I think there's a lot of people that they say they do it, but they don't. They say they will get involved and speak to people, but they don't. And I'm not sure if it's just because of a time issue, but this ability just to say, look, any questions, give me a call. I can tell you what we've done and why we've done it. Because like you say, with the golf swing, like when you was talking about the guy that's trying to get on the tour, he's going to talk about strengthening his knees and doing with these. That's going to completely change things in his golf swing. And we need to be aware of it. This collaboration thing is probably one of the most important things that anyone can do if they're looking to change their golf swing and their life or their body or whatever it may be.
And let's just add one thing in there as well, because, and again, you get past this, but you get past the ego stuff, is that what I also decided was, well, I need to be able to contact the most knowledgeable piece of people in the world about specific things, because this is so important to my client beyond my importance for me. So I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't have these people to connect to, if we may need them. So again, with this guy that's going on the training system, what we're trying to do is build the swing before we look at how it could be even better and how it could be anatomically even better. So we're going to develop the swing first, and then we're going to talk to a guy called Matt Rosen, who I told you about, who's probably the world's leading authority on the golf swing, anatomically speaking, tied in with the findings within the golfing machine by Homer Kelly. So may not be, but that combination of those things. So when we get the swing, we will then put that as a collaboration team and go, so what is it anatomically we can do without disrupting this pattern? And is there anything within the pattern that we could actually make a small change to within the period of time we've got? And we're going to need all those people. There's no two ways about it, because otherwise, it's not that the guy isn't enough. Sorry, Gavin, because his name's out there now. It's not that the guy is enough. What we're trying to do is do something that most people take 40 years to get to. So they start playing golf at 10, and at 50 they make the tour. We're trying to get this guy in less than 1 year now to qualify on that tour. And we're going to have to do something. We're going to have, for me, we're going to have to invest in all of those things that we've got philosophies and attitudes to, but we still don't know whether it's going to work or not. But I've got no doubts that we're going to give it the best chance.
And obviously the amount of data that you're going to get back is it's immeasurable. Someone that's going to have, because it's the commitment. When it comes to someone that has a commitment, that's when you get the real data in it. When someone is committed to something, when you can get the real data of when you're changing stuff and everything, you're moving forward.
Yeah, and also we're committed to a process of management. So just one more thing on the whole concept of whether it be something physical wrong with somebody, mental, or the golf swing, it has to be dealt as a project. For me, everything is so haphazard within the golf coaching industry. We don't make the measurements, we don't manage it, we don't check on it, we don't agree to take responsibility. And it's these things as much as anything that where people fail. This is a project, and the project has to be managed, and it has to be managed well. And I think that more than anything, what we'll get out of this project is some better processes, some better management systems for managing swing changes, and especially managing practice. So for me, practice is probably, and it's kind of like, again, goes back to where you started from, is that practice for me is the most ill thought out, poorly managed aspect that doesn't have anything to do with what it is that we're trying to do, especially if it's change. So, the idea of hitting golf balls is only appropriate when you've already got the skill and in that over-learning department. So when we already do something. But even then, my suggestion is that is overcooked, and we can do that a better way. So once we understand that, and so this is players and coaches, once we understand that the opportunities for game improvement within the swing are the least important part of what it is that we're doing to play better golf, we are in a position to go forward. When we think that making a swing change will make all the difference, that is when we've got it in the wrong place. And I would have said that's the biggest single thing that I can encapsulate everything into. Say that's where the challenges are for coach and player.
I think that's a perfect point to end on. We didn't get to so there's actually 3 things that you just covered there that I didn't even get a chance to get on. So we'll have to do this again. One is obviously practice methods and obviously what we can do. Playing lessons, which I know you're big on, as in the idea of playing people, and obviously the golf machine. So we'll definitely have to do this again because I know there's so much in there that people are going to get value from. So just to finish up, where can any of the golfers get in touch? Golfers that want to get better, that just want to work with you, and any golf coaches out there or guys that want to be golf coaches, where can they find out and reach out to you?
I'm constantly trying to make this easier, but really, again, it's not one of my greatest skills. Simply go to peterhudsongolf.com. It couldn't be easier than that, and start there and, get in contact with me. If you find my email address from that, then you'll see that there's a link that anybody at any time can have a half-hour conversation with me. They can book that up. But I want to, the important thing is, and I think that we found this during lockdown, is that people need to talk. And, my privilege to be where I am in life, to have had the success that I've had, is that, please, if you need to talk, just to ask for advice, then just call me, and don't be afraid to do that. My advice is free. I don't want anything from you. If you think at some later stage you might get something from me, great. But I'm there to give to you. So, if you just want to talk about your game, if you're a tour player and you're struggling a little bit, or you're a total beginner and don't know where to start, just pick up the phone, and start communicating, because communication is where the answers are.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Peter, again, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got a busy schedule, and I'm really honoured that you come on here, and we will definitely have to do this again.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's just, as I say to everybody that has to put up with me, it's the time that anybody gives me. And if anybody makes it through the whole of this recording, well done.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
For more information on golf performance, by increasing your power, by getting in better positions, by working on your body and mind, go to unbreakablegolfers.com and sign up to the free asset.